I'm Kealy and this is Voice of a Creative, and today I'm going to show you how I sewed my Christmas cards this year. So I decided to do something a little bit different for my Christmas cards this year. I actually wanted to sew them and then attach them to a card blank. So these are the cards that I've created. So I used a background, which I've just hemmed, and then I sewed a shape onto it and then added a bow, and I'm going to show you just how I did that. I did a few different designs. So we've got the star, and then the gingerbread man, Christmas tree, the bauble, and then I've got a few more here. I'll try and find a present as well. So a few different designs that I've got there. The things you will need for this, so I've got some card blanks with the cards and envelopes. I went for this brown colour because I thought it would be nice with the colours that I chose for my fabric. You will of course need some Christmas fabrics. So I had a few in my stash, but I actually went out and bought this fat quarter pack, which I've used for this, and that was from Hobbycraft. But any cotton fabric will do for this. I've also bought a selection of different ribbons. I've got my bow maker, my sewing machine, and obviously other bits of sewing equipment. The only other thing that I've used is, I feel like I'm cheating a little bit, but is a glue gun, and that's to attach it to the card at the end as well. You will also need some paper to draw out your templates. So that's what I've got here. It's just printer paper that I've used to do that. Okay, for the first step, you need to make a template for your card. So simply what I did was place my actual card onto a piece of paper and then draw and cut round it to get this template. I then used this as a template on my fabric. So I got my different pieces of fabric and then pinned or just laid it on top of the fabric, then cut round to create the size. What I will be doing is actually hemming the outside of this, so it doesn't matter that it's at the moment the same size, because once I fold it in, it will become the correct size. So I'm going to start by doing that now. So I'm just folding over about 1 centimetre. I'm just doing this by eye, and then I'm going to pin all the way along. I'll do the 2 outer sides first, and then I'll do the others, and then that ends up in a nice neat fold then. Okay, so that's my first stage. So I've pinned all the way round, and I've just finger pressed it so that it lies flat. As you sew it, it will start to lie flat anyway. At this stage, you might want to kind of just go briefly over with the iron, but I'm not going to bother with that. I'm just going to leave it like that. I will place the pin kind of half over it, so it just keeps it together. So I've got that one. Obviously, eventually when that's done, that will fit on my card. So the next stage is to create the piece of fabric that will sew onto that. And I made a few different templates. So for the present was just literally a square, and I cut another strip of fabric for this. Then my Christmas tree. Now a lot of these I created on the fold. So because most of the things are symmetrical, so I folded the paper, drew the shape, and then obviously it was symmetrical each side. So my Christmas tree. Again, for my star as well, my bauble, and the same with the gingerbread man as well. So obviously there are more Christmas shapes that you could go for. For this one, I've got the Christmas tree, so I've already cut it out of fabric. So yeah, again, I pinned it onto the fabric and then cut it out. So I've got that one ready when I get there. So I'm going to go ahead and sew that. So I've put in a contrasting thread. I'm using red thread for this. I wanted one that would kind of go with a lot of the backgrounds but not stand out too much, so it's still in a Christmassy colour. And I'm just going to use a straight stitch on my machine with which is slightly larger for this. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew that now. So when I get to a corner, I just make sure the needle is down into the fabric, lift up the press foot and then pivot so that I can do the next side. I am sewing about half a centimetre away from the edge, so I'm just using one of the lines on the plate there to actually judge where I'm sewing. You could, I suppose, use the lines on the fabric. So this does happen sometimes, the bit comes unfolded. Okay, and back stitch at the end to finish. You can trim your threads, it just makes it easier to do that as you go along. And then I've got my hemmed square there. So the next stage is to take the piece of fabric that you want to use. I place it just using my eye in the middle. It's quite easy with these checkered fabrics. And then pin. Now normally you would pin around the outside, but with this, because we're sewing around the outside, you need to pin in the middle. Now I don't tend to use too many pins for this, but obviously it's all according to how good your control is. So I've pinned that on. Now I'm going to use, it's called applique, so it's applying one piece of fabric to another, and I'm going to be zigzag stitching around the outside to do that. So I'm going to change to my second largest zigzag stitch, and I'm going to decrease the stitch size just a little bit for that. I'll show you a close-up of the zigzag stitch. So I am just using a normal foot. I'm not using a freehand embroidery foot or anything because I can just pivot at the corners, and I haven't tried too complicated shapes. Obviously if you tried something a bit more complicated, it might be easier for you to use that kind of foot. So I'm starting at the bottom of the Christmas tree. Just think carefully about where you're starting, and then I start by just doing 2 stitches to make sure that it's in the correct place on the tree. So it's overlapping half onto this, half onto each fabric basically, so that will help attach it. So, and it's cotton, so it shouldn't fray too much anyway. So I mean, I could have overlocked the edges first, but actually time saving is easier to just sew it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and at the end as well. So when I get to the end, I just make sure that the zigzag is on the right hand side, and then I leave the needle in and turn my fabric, and then I can just go down the other side. And exactly the same . And then, as you did, trim off the spare threads. So I've now attached that to the square. I do need to iron this to just make sure it stays flat, so I will pop and do that in a second. So the next thing is to make the bow. So I bought this at the Handmade Fair, so this is a bow maker, and they're really easy to use, and they do really interesting but also really cute ribbons. So some of the ribbons that I've created are like this little one here, but you can also do layered bows. So like this one here, it's got a layered bow, so it's got 3 little bows together, or you can do the same with 2 bows together. So I'm going to just do a simple bow with this green ribbon. So I'm using the little bow maker, and you can keep the ribbon on the roll. There's lots of tutorials on YouTube for this, but if you did want another tutorial on how to use this, then please just comment down below and I can do it. So you put the ribbon in the first slot, and I'm looking to make quite a small ribbon, so I'm just going to go to the second one along. So you slot it in, then make sure you're the same the other side. So I've got 2 this side and 2 this side, and then bring it down and slot it in at the bottom there. You can then cut your ribbon. Then you take the ribbon that you've just tucked in the side there, and you put it through the hole in the middle of the bow maker. There we go. And you bring that ribbon up round through the middle bit like that. Then you take this piece and then you just tie it together. So you can pull it tight, and then while it's still on the bow maker, you can snip the edges, and then you just simply slide the bow off. So that's my bow there. So now I have my pieces, my bits on my Christmas card and my actual bow, and what I did was literally glue the bow onto here and then glue this onto the card. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and then I'll come back and show you the finished card. This is my finished card. So I think it's really simple shapes, but nice clashing patterns in Christmas colours, and the bow just adds a little 3D effect, and I think it just goes really well with the brown paper. So these are all of my ones that I've made. I hope the people receiving them will really enjoy them. If you want me to film some more tutorials in the future, just comment below with what you would like, because I can certainly do that for you. But thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to hear more from me. Goodbye!